I still remember the exact moment my stomach dropped, the way your body tells you the truth before your mind is willing to accept it. It was a Thursday night in late October 2019. I had come home from work later than usual, rain still clinging to my jacket, the faint smell of wet leaves and exhaust following me inside. The apartment was dim, only the glow of her phone lighting up the bedroom through the cracked door. She thought I was still parking the car, I guess. But I had jogged up the steps to our second-floor walk-up quicker than normal, hoping to surprise her with takeout from that little Thai place she loved downtown. Instead, I froze halfway through the hallway when I heard the faint buzz of her phone and saw her shoulders tense in the glow. It's strange how certain images burn themselves into your memory. She was sitting cross-legged on the bed, hair up in that messy bun she always threw together when she was winding down for the night, wearing the old hoodie of mine she had claimed years ago. And there it was, the faint smile tugging at her lips as her thumbs flew across the screen. That smile used to be mine. For years I had been the reason behind it. And yet, in that moment, watching from the shadows of our own home, I knew something was broken. But before I get too far ahead of myself, maybe I should rewind a bit. You see, if I told you that I'd always been suspicious, or that there were glaring signs I ignored, I'd be lying. Truth is, for a long time, I thought I had it good. My name's Ryan, and back then I was 29, living just outside of Columbus, Ohio. Born and raised Midwest kid, the type who still believed in loyalty and working your way through life, even when the world seemed to keep shifting faster than you could keep up with. I met Emily in the summer of 2014, the kind of hot, sticky summer where the air feels heavy even at night. We locked eyes at a 4th of July cookout at a friend's place. She had this way of laughing with her whole body, like she was letting you in on something special, and I was hooked before I even had the courage to talk to her. By August, we were inseparable. By Christmas, we were already talking about forever. Life with her felt right. Simple in the ways that matter, complicated in the ways that made it interesting. We fought, sure, but it was never the kind of fighting that left scars. Or at least, I thought it wasn't. We built a rhythm together. Sunday mornings with pancakes and coffee, weekday evenings binging Netflix shows until we were quoting them to each other. Late-night drives with the windows down just to feel the cool air whip through the car. By 2017, we had signed the lease on that apartment I mentioned. It wasn't much, just a 2-bedroom in a neighborhood that was more up-and-coming than arrived, but it was ours. I can still picture the mismatched furniture we scraped together. The way we painted one wall in the living room this deep blue she swore would make the place look sophisticated. It didn't, but we laughed about it, and that was enough. If you'd asked me back then what my biggest worry was, it would have been stuff like whether my boss was going to give me the promotion I'd been grinding toward, or if my old Honda Civic was going to survive another Ohio winter without breaking down. The thought that Emily might betray me? That never crossed my mind. Not seriously, anyway. But looking back now, I can see the tiny cracks that were already there. The late nights she'd spend catching up on work emails while I sat on the couch waiting for her. The way she suddenly seemed glued to her phone in a way she hadn't been before, turning it face down, keeping it on silent. At the time, I brushed it off. We were both getting older, careers were demanding more of us, and who wasn't a little obsessed with their phone in 2019? Everyone was scrolling Instagram, tweeting through the night, sending TikToks to friends. It didn't seem like a big deal, but if I'm being honest with myself, I think my gut always knew. There's this thing people don't tell you about relationships. The distance creeps in quietly, almost politely. You don't wake up one day and find a stranger in your bed. No, it's more like you wake up and realize the person you love hasn't really been looking at you the same way for months, maybe longer. Emily had always been affectionate, always reaching for my hand in public, always tucking her head against my shoulder when we'd watch movies. But somewhere around early 2019, it started to fade. She still said, "I love you" before bed. Still laughed at my dumb jokes, but it all felt thinner, like she was performing a role she wasn't invested in anymore. And then came that October night, the night that image burned itself into me forever. Her face lit up by a screen that wasn't meant for me. I didn't storm in right then. Instead, I stood there like an idiot, holding the bag of pad thai and spring rolls, my heart beating so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. I listened to the faint clicks of her typing, the soft buzz of responses, and for the first time in years, I felt like an outsider in my own home. I know people always say hindsight is 20/20, but that night, even without the full picture, I knew. Something was wrong. Something had been wrong for a while, and I had just been too blind, too trusting, too hopeful to see it. It's funny. 2019 was already such a strange in-between year. Politically, socially, even personally. The world felt restless, like we were all waiting for some big shift we couldn't quite name. Maybe I felt that way about my relationship too, without realizing it. I kept telling myself we were solid, that whatever distance I was sensing was just life being life. But in the quiet moments, when it was just me and my thoughts, I'd catch myself wondering why her eyes didn't light up the way they used to, or why I suddenly felt like I had to earn her attention instead of just having it. So there I was, standing in that dim hallway, heart pounding, questions screaming in my head. Who was she talking to? What was she saying? And the worst one, did she ever smile like that for me anymore? I wish I could say I confronted her that night, that I walked in and demanded answers. But I didn't. Instead, I backed away quietly, left the food on the counter, and sat in the dark living room for what felt like hours. I listened to the faint hum of traffic outside, the radiator clanking to life, the muffled sound of her laughter behind the bedroom door, and for the first time in years, I felt completely alone. That was the beginning. The first domino to fall in what would become the hardest, most gut-wrenching chapter of my life. The days after that October night were like walking through fog. Everything looked the same on the surface: work, errands, conversations, but underneath, nothing felt steady anymore. I'd wake up next to Emily, hear her soft breathing, feel the warmth of her body close to mine, and still feel like she was miles away. Every buzz of her phone became a gunshot in my chest. Every quick smile she tried to hide felt like confirmation of the fear I hadn't yet dared to name. At first, I told myself I was being paranoid. I wanted to believe that I was just tired, overthinking, maybe even jealous of nothing. But paranoia has a way of eating at you, and once it sets in, you start seeing shadows everywhere. I noticed how often she disappeared into the bathroom with her phone. I noticed how she'd angle her screen away from me when I walked into the room. I noticed how she suddenly cared more about how she looked when she went out, even if it was just for errands. It all came to a head on November 7th, 2019. I'll never forget that date. The night everything stopped being suspicion and became undeniable truth. That Thursday, I'd left work earlier than usual. My manager had let me go after lunch because business was slow, and I remember driving home with the radio on, the crisp autumn air blowing through the crack in the window. It should have been a good day. But something gnawed at me the whole drive, a whisper I couldn't shake. Check her phone. Now, I was never the type to snoop. I believed in trust, in respecting privacy. Hell, I used to roll my eyes when friends talked about going through their partner's phones. But love makes you blind, and doubt makes you reckless. And that night, my doubt outweighed everything else. When I walked in, Emily was in the shower. Her phone was lying on the nightstand, face down, buzzing every so often. My heart hammered against my ribs as I stared at it, as if just looking too long was already a betrayal. I told myself I wouldn't do it, that I'd sit down, watch TV, wait for her to finish. But then it buzzed again, and I swear I felt something break inside me. I picked it up. Hands shaking, mouth dry, every part of me screaming that I shouldn't. But I did. The lock screen lit up, and my stomach flipped. There it was, a message preview from someone saved as James. Not just a plain James, but with the little basketball emoji tacked on like a private joke between them. And the words, burned into my brain forever, were, "Last night was perfect. I can't stop thinking about you." Perfect. The word mocked me. It was the kind of word Emily used to describe our early dates, those long nights where we stayed up talking until dawn. The word she whispered to me after our first trip together to Chicago, when we walked along Navy Pier with greasy pizza in our hands and the city lights around us. And now it was being handed to someone else. I unlocked the phone. My hands were slick with sweat, my pulse so loud I could barely hear anything else. The messages stretched back weeks. Sweet nothings, flirty jokes, late-night confessions, pictures. Nothing too explicit, but enough to make me feel like the ground had been ripped out from under me. Selfies of her smiling in ways she hadn't smiled at me in months. Him calling her beautiful. Her calling him my escape. That phrase, my escape, still feels like a knife in my ribs. Escape from what? From me? From the life we'd built? From the man who thought he was her future? I remember sinking onto the bed, still scrolling. My vision blurring as my eyes filled with tears I didn't even feel falling. My throat was tight, my chest hollow. It was like I was reading someone else's life, like some cruel trick had dropped me into another man's nightmare. And then I heard the water shut off. Panic jolted through me. I tossed the phone back on the nightstand face down and stumbled into the living room just as she came out of the bathroom in a towel. She smiled at me, casual, like everything was normal, asked about my day, and I had to sit there, nodding, answering, pretending like my entire world hadn't just collapsed in my hands. That night, lying next to her, the weight of the truth pressing down on me, I couldn't sleep. Every time she shifted beside me, every time she breathed, it felt unbearable. My mind replayed those words. Last night was perfect, like a cruel mantra. I wanted to shake her awake, demand answers, demand to know who James was and why she had thrown us away. But fear held me back. Fear of her confirming what I already knew. Fear of hearing her say out loud that she didn't love me anymore. The days that followed were some of the hardest of my life. I went to work, plastered on a smile, tried to function like nothing had changed, but inside I was unraveling. Coffee tasted like ash. The world felt muted, drained of color. I couldn't focus, couldn't laugh, couldn't think about anything but those messages. And Emily, God, she acted like nothing was wrong. She kissed me goodbye in the mornings, asked about my day when I came home, curled up next to me on the couch at night. And all I could think was, how many of those words, those touches, those smiles, were lies? Thanksgiving rolled around a few weeks later. We drove to her parents' house in Cleveland, spent the weekend surrounded by family, laughter, the smell of turkey and pumpkin pie. Everyone thought we were the perfect couple. Her mom even pulled me aside at one point and said how lucky Emily was to have me. I forced a smile, nodded, swallowed the truth like poison. The whole time, I watched Emily slip away for phone calls, watched her laugh at texts she wouldn't show me, watched her drift further and further from the woman I thought I knew. And then, the breaking point came. December 14th, 2019. We had plans to go to a Christmas party downtown, one of those tacky sweater things her friends threw every year. She told me she'd meet me there after running errands. But when I got to the bar, she never showed. I called. No answer. Texted. Nothing. Around 11 p.m., after hours of pacing and drinking until the room spun, I finally called an Uber and went home. And there it was, the final nail in the coffin. Her phone, left unlocked on the kitchen counter, a message glowing on the screen. Tonight was even better than last time. I don't know how much longer I can keep this secret. I swear my legs gave out. I slid to the floor back against the cabinets, shaking. Better than last time. Better than me. Better than us. That was the night everything broke. The night suspicion became certainty. The night I knew I wasn't paranoid, wasn't imagining things, wasn't overthinking. The woman I loved, the woman who promised me forever, was living another life behind my back. And the cruelest part? She came home hours later, humming Christmas songs under her breath, cheeks flushed from the cold, and kissed me like nothing had happened. That was the breaking point. The moment I realized the person I had trusted with everything had already left me long before I had the courage to admit it. If part 2 was the moment everything shattered, then the weeks that followed were the jagged edges cutting into me every single day. Once you know the truth, there's no going back. You can't unsee the messages. You can't unknow the betrayal. You can't unfeel the moment your heart was split open. December 2019 bled into January 2020, like a long, sleepless night. Every day felt like I was carrying a secret no one else could see, like I was walking around with a wound hidden under my shirt. At work, I smiled when people cracked jokes, pretended to care about deadlines, but inside, I was hollow. My coworkers noticed I was quieter, but they chalked it up to holiday stress. I didn't correct them. How do you even begin to tell someone that the person you thought was your future has been lying to your face? At home, Emily carried on like nothing had changed. She decorated the apartment for Christmas, played Mariah Carey on repeat, and wrapped gifts with that meticulous care she always had. To anyone else, she looked like the perfect girlfriend. But I knew that every time she slipped her phone into her pocket with a quick glance, it was him. I knew that every late-night shopping trip or I'm grabbing a drink with coworkers was just another lie. And I hated myself for not saying anything. For weeks, I played along. I laughed when she laughed. I kissed her goodnight. I even exchanged gifts with her on Christmas morning. She gave me a leather watch I had once admired in a store window, and I gave her a necklace she had pointed out months earlier. To anyone watching, it looked like love, but inside, I felt sick holding her, knowing she wore that necklace to dinners with another man. The isolation nearly broke me. I couldn't bring myself to tell my parents. They adored Emily, treated her like family. I couldn't shatter that illusion for them, not yet. My best friend Kyle kept asking me to hang out, to grab beers, to watch football like we used to, but I dodged him every time. I wasn't ready to say the words out loud because saying them would make it real. Instead, I carried it alone. I stayed up until 3 or 4 in the morning, scrolling back through her texts whenever she fell asleep, torturing myself with the evidence, reading and rereading his words, her replies, like scratching at a scab just to feel the sting again. I'd lie awake next to her, staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the times I had trusted her when she said she was working late or out with friends. The flashbacks came like waves. Our trip to Nashville in 2018, her falling asleep on my shoulder during a concert, her promising we'd always choose each other. Every memory was tainted now. Every "I love you" replayed in my head with an unspoken, "but I love him too." By New Year's Eve, I was falling apart. We were at a party with friends, the kind where champagne flows too freely and people scream the countdown like it's the start of a new life. At midnight, Emily kissed me in front of everyone and the room cheered. But in my head, all I could think was, who did she kiss at midnight last year? Who will she be kissing when I'm not around next year? The kiss felt hollow, staged, like a performance for everyone else's benefit. 20 rolled in like a cruel joke. You'd think the universe would give me some kind of sign, some kind of push to do what I knew I had to do, but instead, it gave me silence. Or maybe I just ignored the signs because facing the truth head-on terrified me more than anything. Then the pandemic hit. March 2020. The world shut down, and suddenly, Emily and I were locked inside that apartment together, 24/7. If you want to know what hell feels like, try quarantining with someone you know is betraying you but pretending everything is fine. At first, I thought maybe it would expose her, that being trapped together would make it impossible for her to keep sneaking around. But cheaters are resourceful. She'd sneak into the bathroom for Zoom calls. She'd go for long walks to clear her head. She even started volunteering to run errands, something she had never enjoyed before. And me? I just sat there day after day, trapped between rage and paralysis. My mental health tanked. I stopped working out. I stopped cooking. I stopped caring about anything. Most nights, I'd sit on the couch drinking whiskey straight from the bottle, scrolling through old pictures of us trying to figure out when exactly I lost her. Was it the summer of 2018, when she started working at that new marketing firm? Was it when her friend group changed, when she started hanging out with people I didn't know as well? Or was it something I did, some way I failed her that she never told me about? I kept asking myself those questions over and over, like if I could pinpoint the moment everything went wrong, I could fix it. But the truth was there was no fixing it. Not anymore. One night in April 2020, I broke down completely. Emily had fallen asleep early, phone clutched in her hand. I took it gently, unlocked it, and scrolled. There he was, James, still very much in her life, still sending her goodnight messages, still calling her babe, still talking about the future they were planning. The future that didn't include me. That night I sat in the bathroom with the door locked, phone in one hand, whiskey in the other, sobbing quietly so she wouldn't hear. I felt like I was drowning, like the walls were closing in. And for the first time, I thought about ending it all. Not because I didn't want to live, but because I couldn't see a way forward. But then, God, I don't even know how to explain this. Something inside me shifted. I thought about my mom, about how she'd never survive losing me like that. I thought about my dad, the man who taught me to never back down from anything, not even when the odds were stacked against you. I thought about my younger cousin, who always looked up to me like a big brother. And I thought about all the dreams I once had, the life I wanted to build, the people I hadn't even met yet. I put the whiskey down. I put her phone back. I sat there on the cold tile floor until the sun came up. And I made myself a promise. I wasn't going to let her betrayal destroy me. But making that promise and living it out are two very different things. The fallout of her betrayal was everywhere. I snapped at people at work, even over Zoom meetings. I withdrew from friends, ignored texts, avoided calls. My parents started asking questions about why I seemed so off, why Emily and I weren't visiting anymore. I deflected every time. I wasn't ready to break the facade. Not yet, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't keep living like this. I couldn't keep pretending. The fallout had stripped me down to nothing, left me raw and broken. But somewhere in that rubble, a small spark of anger was starting to grow. Not just at her, but at myself, for letting it go on this long. For letting her lies dictate my every thought. For letting the man she betrayed fade into someone unrecognizable. I didn't know it yet, but the fallout was about to give way to something else. A shift, a decision, a turning point. Turning the tables wasn't immediate. It didn't happen with a dramatic confrontation or a sudden burst of courage. No, it was slow, almost imperceptible at first. It started with small things I could control. I began running again in May 2020, hitting the streets of Columbus before dawn while the world was still quiet. The city streets empty except for the occasional early delivery driver. The cold air stung my lungs at first, but with every step, I felt a little bit of the weight inside me lift. I started to remember who I was before Emily, before the betrayal, before everything fell apart. I also started documenting everything. I wrote it down in a notebook I'd bought at Target, sitting at the tiny kitchen table we had squeezed into our apartment. Every message I had found, every lie she had told, every moment I had felt that sharp, gnawing doubt, I wrote it all down. Not because I planned to use it against her in a dramatic showdown, but because I needed to see it outside my own head. It made it real, but also, strangely, it made it less powerful. Seeing it on paper made the anger manageable. The pain, structured in ink, became something I could handle. By June, I started reaching out to friends again. Kyle was the first to notice. "Man, it's good to have you back," he said when we met for beers in his garage, the scent of motor oil and burgers thick in the air. I laughed. A real laugh, not the forced kind I'd been giving everyone for months. Talking to him, sharing bits and pieces without spilling everything at once, reminded me that I wasn't alone in the world. But the real shift came in July. I realized I didn't just want to survive this. I wanted to reclaim my life, to show myself that I could thrive even after being shattered. I started setting boundaries with Emily without telling her what I was doing. I stopped answering her texts immediately. I stopped asking where she was going. I stopped letting her presence define my happiness. And then came the hardest part, confronting the truth publicly. Not through shouting or dramatic accusations, but by living differently. I started posting more at work, volunteering for projects I used to avoid, reconnecting with colleagues who had drifted away. I signed up for a cooking class, something I'd always joked about but never done. I even started dating again, tentatively, awkwardly, but with a sense of curiosity rather than desperation. Every step I took was small, but cumulatively they added up. I was reclaiming myself. One evening in late August, I sat down in the living room, Emily across from me scrolling on her phone like she always did, and I realized I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not betrayal, just clarity. She glanced up at me and smiled, and I could see the old sparks she used to hide behind a mask of casualness. But the thing is, I wasn't hers to spark anymore. I had grown beyond that. I didn't have to corner her. I didn't have to humiliate her. I didn't have to yell or cry or beg. My transformation was quiet but devastatingly effective. The power had shifted. Not because I wanted revenge, not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I had finally stopped letting her hurt me. I had taken the wheel of my own life again. And yet, I can't say it was easy. Every time I ran into a reminder, the cafe we used to go to, a song on the radio, a post she liked online, I felt a flicker of that old pain. Sometimes it hit me in waves, a cold, sudden reminder that I had been deeply betrayed. But this time, I let it wash over me instead of drowning in it. I let myself feel, and then I let it go. By September 2020, I had a routine. Morning runs, healthy meals, journaling, reconnecting with friends, dating slowly and cautiously, and building a career I was proud of. I even started a small side hustle consulting for local businesses, something I had always wanted to do but never had the courage to pursue. With every small victory, I rebuilt the confidence she had tried to take from me. And then came the final act of turning the tables, the moment that sealed my transformation. One evening in October, exactly a year after that first devastating night, Emily came home and tried to talk to me about us. She looked nervous, apologetic, maybe even scared. I listened as I had done countless times before, but this time I felt no fear. I felt no longing. I felt nothing for the person she had been while betraying me. I told her what I needed to say, calmly, with the quiet strength I had built over the year. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I didn't cry. I told her that I was done, that I had grown beyond the life we had shared, and that she had lost me long before I walked out the door. Her face changed in that moment. Shock, regret, maybe even guilt, but it didn't matter. I had taken control of my story. I had turned the tables. After she left, I sat alone in the apartment, the silence ringing in my ears. But it was a different kind of silence now. It wasn't suffocating or heavy. It was freeing. It was the kind of silence that comes when you finally let go of someone who doesn't belong in your life anymore. I poured myself a drink, not whiskey this time, something lighter, and toasted to myself. To survival, to resilience, to growth. To the fact that I'd been knocked down but refused to stay down. By the end of that year, I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. I had reconnected with old friends, made new ones, discovered new passions, and reclaimed the sense of self that had been buried under betrayal and heartbreak. I realized that true power isn't about revenge or humiliation, it's about reclaiming your life, your peace, your sense of worth. That's what turning the tables really means. And so, as the calendar turned to 2021, I looked back on the chaos of the past year with a strange sense of gratitude. Not because of the pain Emily caused, but because it forced me to confront my own weaknesses, to face my fears, and ultimately, to rise above them. The transformation wasn't immediate, and it wasn't clean. It was messy, painful, emotional, but real. And by the time I walked into the new year, I felt like a different person. Stronger, clearer, unshakable. It was in that moment, sitting on the balcony with the city lights of Columbus stretching out beneath me, that I truly understood. The tables had been turned. Not by anger, not by spite, but by me choosing to reclaim my life. And nothing, not even the betrayal of someone I once loved, could take that from me. The resolution didn't come with fireworks or a dramatic confrontation. There was no moment of vindication where I stood on some metaphorical pedestal and declared myself free. No, it came quietly, almost imperceptibly, in the ordinary rhythms of life. It was in the mornings when I woke up and felt whole, even without her. It was in the evenings when I cooked dinner and actually enjoyed the silence. It was in the first genuine laugh I shared with someone new, unshadowed by betrayal or doubt. By early 2021, I had moved out of that apartment. It was painful, packing away the remnants of our life together, the memories tucked into cardboard boxes, some things I couldn't bring myself to touch. But leaving that place wasn't a surrender. It was a declaration. The walls we had built together, the furniture we had picked out, the pictures on the walls, it was all part of a chapter that had ended. I didn't burn bridges or destroy memories. I just let them be, like fossils of a life that had taught me something about love, trust, and survival. I found a small studio downtown, something modest but mine. The neighborhood was noisy, bustling, the kind of place where the streets hum with life at all hours. It smelled faintly of fresh bread from the bakery on the corner and car exhaust from the street below. Every time I opened the window, I felt it. The world was moving, and I was moving with it, not behind it. And then came the unexpected, the new connections, the new people, the new possibilities. I started seeing someone, cautiously at first, someone who didn't have to fix my past but simply fit into my present. Her name was Claire. She worked at a local nonprofit and had this infectious laugh that reminded me of the early days with Emily but wasn't tied to any history, any betrayal. With her, I could be myself without fear, without suspicion. It was a subtle joy, the kind that creeps up on you when you least expect it. Work began to thrive, too. The side hustle I had started during the darkest months of 2020 began to take off, turning into a small but steady business that gave me confidence I hadn't realized I'd lost. I was reclaiming not just my personal life but my professional life, building something solid and real on my own terms. Every project completed, every client happy, felt like another brick in the foundation of the new Ryan. Stronger, wiser, sharper, and yet, even in this rebuilding, I never forgot the lessons. I never forgot the nights spent reading her messages, the ache of realizing she had chosen someone else, the cold nights on the couch feeling completely alone. Those memories didn't haunt me anymore. They grounded me. They reminded me that life isn't always fair, that people are flawed, and that love can hurt in ways you never imagine. But they also reminded me that pain isn't permanent unless you let it be. There was a day in April 2021, sitting at a coffee shop downtown, watching the spring rain drizzle on the windows when it hit me fully. I had been carrying the weight of betrayal for over a year, but now I was lighter. I wasn't carrying anger, not really. I wasn't carrying resentment. I had healed, slowly and imperfectly, but completely. I smiled at the reflection of myself in the window, a man stronger and wiser than the one I had been when Emily's texts had shattered my world. I never ran into Emily after I moved out, and I didn't need to. I didn't need apologies. I didn't need closure. Closure, I realized, wasn't something anyone else could give me. It was something I had to create for myself, through action, through growth, through reclaiming every piece of my life she had tried to break. By the summer of 2021, I was fully myself again. I laughed without fear. I worked without hesitation. I loved without suspicion. I even traveled again, something we had always talked about but never done. I went to the Lake District in the UK, walking the trails my dad had recommended decades ago, feeling the wind whip through my hair, the clouds shifting over the hills. I thought about Emily once or twice, but the thought was distant, like watching someone else's life on TV, detached, impersonal, irrelevant. The most powerful moment of all came quietly. One night, sitting on the balcony of my new apartment with Claire beside me, sipping tea and listening to the city hum below, I realized I was happy. Not the fleeting happiness of distraction, not the hollow mimicry of someone else's love, but true, deep, unshakable happiness. I had been broken, yes, but I had been rebuilt. And the beauty of it was that I had done it on my own terms. Not through revenge, not through confrontation, but through resilience. Looking back now, the betrayal feels like a necessary storm. Painful, yes, and utterly devastating, but necessary. It forced me to confront truths about myself, about love, about trust, about the way life can turn upside down in a single night. It forced me to grow, to change, to rebuild. And in that rebuilding, I discovered something even stronger than the love I had once thought was everything. I discovered myself. I still remember the late-night messages on her phone. I still remember the hollow pit in my stomach, the disbelief, the rage, the heartbreak. But they no longer hold power over me. They're memories, yes, and sometimes memories sting. But now, they are reminders of what I survived, of the life I reclaimed, of the man I became in the wake of heartbreak, and that, in the end, is the resolution. Not a dramatic ending, not revenge, not humiliation, but triumph. Quiet, imperfect, real triumph. The kind that comes from surviving the worst and finding yourself again. From losing someone who didn't deserve you and discovering that what you lost was only temporary, while what you gained, strength, clarity, freedom, was permanent. I don't hate her. I don't think about her every day. I don't want her back. I don't even wonder if she regrets it. She made her choices, and I made mine. And mine led me here, stronger, wiser, free. And if you ask me what I've learned through all of it, the lesson is simple. Betrayal is devastating, but it isn't the end. It's the beginning of something else, something you don't see coming until you're ready. Something that makes you unbreakable, unshakable, unstoppable. And that something, I realized one rainy spring afternoon, is the only thing worth holding on to. Because in the end, surviving isn't just about enduring the storm. It's about learning to dance in the rain, even when the person who taught you to love missteps along the way.